Since as long as I can remember, I've loved listening to music. When I was only 5 years old, I had a small red record player that I played my music on. I've always been a sort of ritualistic kind of person who finds some kind of system for everything that I do.
Weirdo.
I'll explain. Back then, whenever I put a record on the turntable, I liked to prop up the record cover next to the player, showing to anyone who was there
Nobody was.
what record was currently playing. Think of it like album art on your phone screen when you're listening to Spotify. I was so ahead of my time. Most days after kindergarten, I'd head to the fridge for a snack of raw wiener.
Ew.
Yeah, we'll talk about that some other time. And then I'd make a beeline straight from my room to start spinning those sweet discs. I listened to records like Disney's Children's Favorites, Sesame Street's Singing Stars, or books on tape like The Cat Who Wore a Pot on Her Head. Oh, Ben Molina. And with each record played, the cover would be proudly displayed to anyone who would enter my room. Which, I'll admit, was probably only my mom, who most likely didn't even notice that the album cover was on display. But the point is, I had a system, and I loved my system. However, there was one record cover I was afraid to display. It was one of my favorite albums. But looking at the cover, I shuddered at the thought of it. The fear of seeing this cover felt insurmountable to my 5-year-old self. But I had a system, and the system, the ritual, must be kept at all costs. I enjoyed these songs so much and was simultaneously committed to the ritual so greatly that I powered through. I grabbed that record, keeping the back of the cover facing me. I had seen the front far too many times. I took out the record and placed it on the turntable. But before I could put the needle on the record, I knew what must be done. The cover must be turned around and displayed. There was no escaping it. It had to be done. And it had to be done now. Mustering all the courage I could, I turned the cover around and tried to prop it up without looking at it, and therefore not knowing where I was placing it. And consequentially, it fell to the floor. I now knew that there was no way I could place it on display correctly without actually looking at it. My heart pumped faster. Sweat began to form on my little brow. I faced my fears, and as fast as I could, turned around the cover, looked at where I was placing it, and stepped back. There they were, the disembodied heads of Dick Van Dyke and Julie Andrews from the film Mary Poppins, floating there, looking directly at me. I could feel their accusatory gaze piercing my soul, their disapproval with the messy state of my room, or possibly with me altogether. Although it was difficult, I averted my eyes and reached for the needle of the record player. I placed it, and the music began. I stepped back again from the album cover, but could still feel those eyes looking straight at me, straight into me. I tried to ignore them, to just lose myself in the beauty of the music I loved so much, but it was to no avail. The power of their frightening gaze was more than I could bear. I ran to the other side of my bed, attempting to hide away from them, and tried to hum along, but I could still feel them looking at me, as if through my bed. I moved to my Lego pile and began trying to build something to take my mind off of them. Sometimes I'd steal a glance just to see if they'd somehow looked away, but there they always were, just staring, laughing on the inside at my very fear of them. Of course they were smiling, but it was all a ruse. I knew what they really thought. Their mouths may have been smiling, but their eyes told me otherwise. They were out to get me, to haunt me. Oh, it was excruciating. When one side had finished, I couldn't bear to play side two. I courageously grabbed the cover, turned it around, and put the record away. It was time for Muppet Hits to make me feel safe again. Goodbye for now, Mary and Bert. I made it through, and I'll deal with you both again when I listen to side two. I eventually grew out of my fear, but to this day, when I see that cover art, I remember the feeling I used to get back then. Kids, huh? We were all a little weird, I guess. Till next time, peeps.
Peeps! Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, a subscription to the channel would be amazing. And don't forget to hit that like button as well. Thank you so much. See you next week.